Thank you for joining us today. And we're going to have a couple of presentations today. We're going to start off with folks from the State Conservation Commission, Sam Zaner and Eric Cromer and Justin Challenger are going to talk. And then Elaine Hinrichs is going to do quarterly update information. We are going to have you put your questions in the chat box today. If you have questions, please put them into chat. We will answer all of the questions for the first section after they're finished presenting, before Elaine starts, and then Elaine will start, and then we'll answer the questions you have for her at the end of her section. So feel free to stick your questions in that chat. We are recording this session today, and without further ado,
welcome everybody. Again, this meeting is recorded, so if you need to come back to it at another time, you'll be able to do that. And those that weren't able to tune in can come back and look at it. So thank you for all joining. We'll go ahead and get started on this. So today I want to give you a little bit of an outline of what we're going to be covering. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to give you a little bit of an update of where we're at with the admin manual, the new delegation agreement. Then Sam's going to kick off and take over with the ACAP funding workflow. Justin is going to give us some ACAP spending timelines for the federal and the state. Then we'll get back into ACAP reporting and replenishments with Sam. And then at the end of the presentation, Elaine is going to take over and give us a GIS quarterly reporting and some of the GIS updates that's coming to you guys. Just to give you a little bit of update of where we're at with the admin manual. We've been working on this for a long time now. So we've taken it initially to the board in February. There's been a lot of work, a lot of reviews on that. The executive secretary, Doug, has taken a look at that. He is now retired, but he's given us his comments on that. Justin has reviewed it intimately with us throughout the process. We've taken it to a board. The board has reviewed it and given us some feedback. Also, we've had the ACAP work group, which has several counties in that, providing feedback. So where we're at right now is we're going through it with legal. We've been through everything. Legal has gave us some comments on that, on the admin manual. We are getting together next week for our final review and feedback from legal on that. Once that is provided, we will be sending the admin manual draft out to all conservation districts. All should have a draft right now, but the one with the final reviews and feedback will go out as soon as we get done with legal next week. So we're hoping to have that out to you by the end of next week, but there may be some changes that we need to hold off on that. So by the end of July is when we're trying to get that out to you guys for comment. And once we have the out to you, usually we'll give you 30 days to review and give comments back to us. We'll try to do some refinements on that, and we'll go back to our board and our legal for those final revisions, and hopefully we can have that adopted by the August 2026 board meeting. So we're very hopeful. It's a tight deadline. Hopefully we can get to it, but we'll keep you posted. So also, new delegation agreement. Where we're at right now, we're currently working under the original ACAP agreement. That agreement is ineffective till June 30th, 2027, but all the work and the projects must be paid out by December 31st, 2026. So we're currently working with our legal team on the perimeters of the new delegation agreement. We're basing that off of some of the other programs that we have in the SEC. They're currently under some new agreements that they're compiling right now. So we're working with legal, trying to get that figured out. Once we get that figured out, we'll send the draft out to you guys simultaneously with the budget and OJC when they're reviewing it. So hopefully we can get everybody reviewing it at the same time. If there's no major comments or anything like that, we'll get it back and we'll send it out to you guys for formal signature. So when can we expect that? The sooner the better. We would like to have that done about the same time as we have the admin manual done, so we can tie everything together. So we're probably looking at August or September to get that final agreement done. So that's where we're at with that. like I said, if you have any questions, just hold off till we're done with the whole presentation, and we can come back to it, and we'll answer those at the end of the time. So I will hand it off to Sam to go over funding workflow.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yep.
So this is just meant to be a little bit of a refresher from our administrative trainings, just to give you guys a broad overview, a reminder about how ACAP funds are received at the district level from the State Conservation Commission. Starts off with a 50% advancement each year. Of course, that is following budget approval. We are not able to process any advancements until the state budget gets passed. The remaining 50% of your annual allocation is then reimbursed through the GIS quarterly reports based on your expenses for that quarter. And all of these requests must go through the GIS, and that auto-populates a specific form that we have to use when we are submitting for those replenishments for you guys. And advancements and payments. So districts have the ability to give applicants 50% advance on their contracts, on their contracted ACAP amounts. And that is so that they have some working capital, much like the state provides to the districts through this program. Additional reimbursements to applicants can then be up to 20% of that contract amount as the project progresses, with the final 30% of funds being withheld until the project is completed, inspected, final verified, certified. There's a couple different ways we account for funds at the Conservation District. The quarterly reporting system splits things up into income and expenses. And just another reminder that of your annual ACAP allocation, districts are allowed to spend 6% of that on administrative activities, 14% on technical assistance, and a minimum of 80% of the allocation has to go towards projects, best management practices. I know there are a good amount of districts that are putting 100% of their ACAP funds towards projects, and that's awesome that you guys are able to do that too. And again, just a little refresher as to what can count towards administrative technical assistant expenses. Some of these are interchangeable as well. If you guys ever have any questions as to what should be put under each category, please feel free to reach out and we can work through that with you guys. Some ineligible uses of ACAP funds would be purchasing things directly for the applicants, banking funds to hold for future years. We do have set spending deadlines for each annual allocation. So it is not a great idea to continually hold front funds from year to year. Expenses not tied directly to ACAP activities are not eligible, as well as assigning value to interns or volunteers. ACAP expenses have to be actual incurred expenses that you are claiming. For salary and benefits, for claiming staff time expenses, these could be charged directly by time spent. So it could be hourly tracking, percent effort. I know a handful of counties are doing the cost allocation method, as some ACAP technicians are splitting their time between ACAP and nutrient management or the Chesapeake Bay program. So that is certainly allowed as long as you're documenting how that percent is calculated and letting your regional rep know when you go to submit quarterly reports. And we'll also be getting into the documentation requirements, what records we like to see, especially when processing replenishments, just as a backup documentation to justify the expenses you are asking to be replenished for. So again, this is just kind of detailing how one of the potential options to track and account for staff time if you are claiming it for reimbursement. And like I mentioned before, the cost allocation method is also another acceptable way to claim staff salary and benefits. And if you guys ever have any questions on how to come up with a cost allocation method or percentages, please feel free to reach out to your regional reps and we can help work you through that as well. 80% minimum of the ACAP funds have to go towards projects. So this looks like either actual construction of the BMPs themselves, any engineering, consulting, planning, or permitting fees, other project documentation that you need to complete as part of the project certification. And if there's any other costs that don't fall into these neat categories, feel free to reach out and we can help talk through that. Like I mentioned, engineering, consulting, planning, permitting can also be considered under the project funds category, although if used in this way, we are limiting it to 10% of the total project cost. So we have a little breakdown example as well. If the total cost of the project is $450,000, even if the conservation district is only putting $350,000 of ACAP funds towards that, $45,000 or 10% of the total cost can still be used for any engineering or permitting fees associated. Like I touched on before, ineligible project expenses would be purchasing equipment directly for the applicants, anything that would fall under routine maintenance for the operation, other expenses not directly tied to installation or permitting, and then electrical work not tied directly to proper functioning of the BMP. And just as a reminder that completion and verification, certification, final on-site inspections are required before the final payment for the project is sent out. And we do have verification forms or grant finalization forms if needed. I know a good handful of projects are partnered with NRCS, so they will have their own document that they fill out for NRCS purposes where that allows them to send payments. But in a lot of cases, if a PE is signing off on a project, their stamp of approval is sufficient as uploading that to the GIS as justification. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Justin to go over some spending updates.
Thanks, Sam. Can you proceed the slides for me as we go?
Of course.
All right, so we all should be well aware that our spending deadline is the end of this year for the federal funds. In order to make that happen, we need to make sure our projects are completed on time so we can get all the bills out and get the money out the door, because there is no leeway past that date. Okay, so Sam, if you go to the next slide, I think we got some more info here. So with that said, we need to really be making sure that we're spending all that federal funding that was allocated to the districts as soon as possible. Okay, our budget office is really paying close attention to this money to make sure it is all spent. They're very clear. The word coming down from above for us from like governor's budget office and our budget folks here at PDA is they want every penny of those funds spent by the end of this year. So if you're one of the few districts that have money left in Harrisburg, you need to make sure you get that out. Hopefully it's all out with this current quarterly report. If it's not, hopefully you're in contact with your regional technician frequently and know that you can submit another invoice here before the end of July. But July 31st is when we would like to see every penny out of Harrisburg to give you time and to show budget office that we are moving those funds appropriately. So if you're one of those couple counties with money left, you should have been contacted by now from our regional coordinator. You should be well aware of this and working with them. Those of you that have federal money left to spend, right? You got all your money out of Harrisburg, that's great, but you have money left to spend by the end of the year. We need to make that priority number one, make sure that money is out to the farmers, finished projects as soon as possible. We don't want to be waiting on, oh, I've got one contract that's going to finish December 15th. That's too late. We really want to see that money moving, and projects like firm spend plans. We know when projects are going to finish up. We know how much money we're going to have spent, and we want to make sure that money's out the door. Okay. We need to be making sure that every penny is spent of that federal money. Okay. It's very important. I can't stress that enough. Budget Office is considering taking federal money back that isn't spent or doesn't have a clear spend plan and have concrete evidence or concrete knowledge that it will be spent by the end of the year. So yeah, this is me conveying the importance that money needs to be spent quickly on good projects on the ground, out the door. Okay? If you have questions about this, you have concerns you're not going to meet that spending deadline, or you have projects you don't think are going to finish, please reach out to the regional coordinators immediately. Have them, you can reach out to the center. We can help you try to find ways to get that money utilized quickly. So not only do we have a federal deadline that's approaching here rapidly, we've got state deadlines that are coming up too. Okay, so ACAP legislation is pretty clear that we have to, the districts have to use that money within 2 years. Okay, that first state 2-year deadline is coming up next year. If you're not using that money, then you may see a reduced allocation in future years. So what does that look like? So fiscal year 2024-25 funds, we're going to be looking at in the spring of 27. So next spring, we're going to be looking at that deadline, looking at those funds, and making sure you have all that money spent by the spring. So when we do allocations next year, when we look at allocations for 27-28, we're going to be looking at that 24-25 money, because you have 2 years to spend that money. And if you didn't have that money spent, just like dirt and gravel roads, you may not get another allocation in fiscal year 27. Because if you didn't spend 24-25 money, that means you're still sitting on 25-26 and 26-27 at that point. Okay, you're sitting on more than 2 years of funding. So in 27-28, you will likely not see an allocation of state money. That money will go back into the allocation formula and be spread out through all the other districts who do spend that money. Okay, works just like dirt and gravel roads. If you're familiar with that program, or your manager, if you're a technician and you're not familiar with it, talk to your manager. They'll let you know how that works. Okay, so that's it for the spending. I know I went through that quickly. That's a very important information. If you have questions about that, feel free to call me, call Eric, call your regional coordinator. If you have concerns about spending that money on time, you need assistance, or you need help getting that money through, please let us know. We can't help you if we don't know, and we'll do our best to get you all the help you need to make sure you spend that money.
Thanks, Justin. We'll also be taking questions after this PowerPoint presentation. I just have a couple more slides, and we'll take questions related to this before we jump into Elaine's GIS updates presentation. So again, just some reminders and refreshers that Elaine will also dive into in her presentation. So half of your allocation is given to you via replenishment, replenishing expenses for the ACAP program. And again, this is on actual spending based on what you claim in each quarterly report. Elaine will dive into this a little bit more, but just some reminders before submitting each quarterly report to make sure that you have information in all of the blank boxes, all the income you received from the state during that quarter, enter all your expenses. Most importantly, to make sure that your local account balance at the district matches what the GIS thinks your balance is. Every quarter we have a couple counties that are off very slightly, but it's good to touch base with either your regional coordinator or Elaine and the GIS team to help figure out how to fix any discrepancies or figure out where that error might have been generated from. There also is the activities tab in the quarterly report, which is important for documenting staff time, especially what has been accomplished during each quarter. And also, the district manager is the one who is in charge of submitting the quarterly report, unless there is a case where they have appointed someone else to do so in their place. And here are some reminders as to what you need to help provide documentation about if you are claiming expenses. For administrative expenses, it would be documenting the salary and benefits, any mileage, office supplies, field equipment, if you need a camera or a new computer to use for your work on the ACAP program. A portion of that can also be used. That could be charged under administrative or technical. Like I mentioned before, there is a lot of overlap. Technical expenses can also include engineering, consulting, planning, permitting, hosting field days, trainings, attending conferences, having promotional materials for any workshops, things like that. For projects, it is good practice to list the best management practices that are being funded. For any invoices, it is helpful to have a breakdown of labor, equipment, materials, uploading any engineering invoices, planning invoices, things like that. And there also is some additional verification needed, making sure for the income area to make sure that you are entering it in the correct spot, whether it is an advancement or replenishment. And then also including BMP verification with your quarterly report if you are sending out final payment for any projects, making sure account balances match, and then also doing file reviews. And another reminder about record retention, we do ask that you retain all records for at least 7 years after the final payment or the lifespan of the longest BMP. We also have available project documentation checklists. If anyone happens to need those, feel free to reach out and we can make sure you get that as well. And it is very helpful to upload all of the project files into the GIS system. It makes it easier for us regional coordinators to go into the GIS and review files that way instead of having you email them over to us or coming out and doing an in-office visit. It's easier if they're all in one place for us to review when we're doing quarterly reports and replenishments. And again, there are some additional supporting documents that can be kept in the hard file as well. And just another reminder about who you can contact with what questions, but if you reach out to any of us at the commission or any of the CACAT members, we can certainly point you in the right direction if we are not able to answer your question ourselves. And then again, just a map of our coverage areas. And I included one for the Penn State team as well, but they do have flexibility based on their skill set. So there's a good chance you'll be seeing multiple team members from the CACAT team based on what they are out to help you with. And again, our contact info. And that is all I have for you guys. So we can take some questions now.
All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. Let me look at the Q&A just to make sure there's none there. Seeing no questions, Elaine, it's all yours.
All right, thank you all. We're going to move on to the GIS, Geographic Information Systems section of this webinar. So usually I do this individually. We've decided to combine them because the topics are so timely together here. The quarterly reporting timeframe is right now. I'll note later, but they are due July 15th of 2026. What I'm going to do here is a review of the quarterly reporting process, along with some new emphasis on tips. And then I'm also going to review some of the updates and improvements and bug fixes that we've been working on in the suite of ACAP GIS tools. For introductions, as I mentioned, my name is Elaine Hinrichs. I'm the GIS Technical Support Lead and Trainer with the Center for Ag Conservation Assistance Training. My work currently is supported by Mike Anderson of Spatial IT. You all may have also worked with my other team members in the past, Ben Moss and Jackson Bouffard. And so I'm prioritizing things as we go, along with, of course, the help of the State Conservation Commission and CACAT and Mike. But if you have questions, the lead time might be a little bit longer in the next month or two as I get adjusted to that, but trying to work through some of our backlog. As I mentioned, the Q2 2026 quarterly reports are the current quarterly reports that will be due on July 15th. We're then in the Q3 timeframe. So as soon as your Q2 quarterly report is accepted and reviewed by your SEC regional coordinator, you'll then be able to view your Q3 quarterly report. If you see any issues with the initiation of your quarterly report or any issues with as you're entering data, please reach out to me. My ACAP GIS support email address I'll have later in the presentation. You can also reach out to your SEC regional coordinator if you have questions about data entry. So in the first realm of tips, I'm going to share 3 tips that I wanted to emphasize through some discussions that we, the sort of ACAP team, have had through discussions with the Dirt and Gravel Road team, which has very similar SEC programs. And they had highly recommended when you are doing account transfers internally in your district bank accounts to transfer those amounts of money separately to reduce potential confusion. And this has come up when I've worked with districts in the when you're trying to determine why there's a discrepancy between your ending balance in the GIS quarterly report and the ending balance of your district bank account balance or in your QuickBooks. Sometimes that can be really hard to figure out if there are transfers that are sort of subtracting money that you're reimbursing yourself internally. And so we really do recommend, if possible, I know some districts have internal policies that might make this difficult, but if possible, if, for example, you receive $100,000 of SEC replenishment into your general bank account and also happen to have $20,000 of admin expenses, to just transfer that $100,000 replenishment from your general bank account into the ACAP bank account in full, and separately transfer the $20,000 from your ACAP bank account into your general bank account, instead of trying to transfer the difference, the $80,000 just from your general bank account to the ACAP bank account. That example is kind of simple, but sometimes what we've seen is just if you have a lot of calculations you're trying to do all at once, it can be very difficult to go back months later to try and figure out what might be wrong there. When you are preparing to submit your quarterly report, one thing that has come up is that it can be really helpful to review your accounting software. A lot of people use QuickBooks for that, as well as your bank account statements before the end of the quarter, so that if you do have payments that you need to make for a certain project, or transfers, like a transfer of a replenishment from your general bank account into your ACAP bank account, so that you have time to do that before the quarter ends. And so reviewing that about a week before the quarter ends is probably a good idea. But if you know that in your district you would need more time, I'd recommend reviewing at that time, just to help you be able to do things before the quarter ends. Because like many of us, you're probably usually doing that submission between the 1st and the 15th of July in this example. But if you actually needed a transfer to have happened in June, you don't know until If you do miss data entry, particularly if if the transfer actually did happen in June and you forgot to submit it in your July quarterly report, or if you had payments for a project that you forgot to submit in a previous quarter, if that quarter's report in the GIS was both submitted and accepted by the SEC, it means it is then locked. And a sort of change that we're making in our process and planning to sort of set up some of our code updates to help you all be able to go along with these steps is to start documenting those really in the current open quarterly report. Because once the SEC accepts a quarterly report and begins processing the replenishment, that check cannot really be adjusted. And so if there were payments that you forgot to enter in a previous quarterly report, the SEC can't add on additional money in the past. They can process it in a current open quarterly report where they can then handle that additional change. This is something where if you miss data entry for some reason, or if you are seeing a discrepancy and it turns out you did have some sort of issue entering data in the past, to definitely inform immediately your SEC regional coordinator of the situation. They'll loop me in as well if needed. But what we've been doing for this now is to note that in the additional comment section of the activity report, which is in the quarterly report, that sort of second tab. It's the last section there. Hey, this transfer happened in our bank account actually in, again, June, but we're documenting it as occurring in July because we missed entering it and the quarterly report's already been accepted. And then if it was a payment that you missed entering, say it was in May, and you realize that in the current quarter, Q3, you could then, when the Q3 quarterly report is being entered, put in that payment then as a date in Q3, but note in the payment comment field in the contract that the actual date was, again, back in Q2, and you are just making up for this data entry because the quarterly report was locked. This might sound a little complicated since this is something that we're slightly sort of changing in our process. So if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to, again, your SEC regional coordinator or me. So I'm now going to go into a review of the quarterly report fields and data entry and process, a sort of overview, but also some parts of it are going to be a deep dive. If you've heard this before, I recommend still listening because it's helpful to have a review before your quarterly report is due to make sure there's no miscommunications. Also, after this, I'm going to be going through some of, again, the sort of code updates and improvements to the suite of ACAP GIS tools, including a new feature that we launched that I've been talking to folks about more one-on-one, but something I really want all district staff to know about. So in the quarterly report, that first section of data entry in the income expenses tab is your program income. So this is going to be some stuff that Sam talked about. So the real deal, as I've sort of already mentioned, is that it's all about what happened and what went deposited into your district ACAP bank account during the report quarter. So advances usually once a year, replenishments, which might be quarterly depending on your time frame, any interest that's earned. If you have any project returns from the farmer back to the district because they couldn't spend certain amounts of money, you would enter that in the contract editor itself. And then it would be pulled into the quarterly report automatically. And then any other income such as donations. For expenses, this is what's paid and left the district ACAP bank account during that quarter. So in our time frame, really up until June 30th for Q2 2026. So the eligible admin and tech assist expenses that Sam mentioned, again, for projects, you enter those in the contract editor. They're automatically calculated, but do check them. Again, you can accidentally miss a payment. And then any other ACAP expenses have to be explained in the activity report for SEC approval. There's a field for that. For the balances Sam noted, it's really important to check that these match or at least can be reconciled. And so if you know that you had some amount difference that you have a understanding of and is going to be clarified, or you've already talked to the State Conservation Commission and the GIS team about that, that's okay. We are continuing to reconcile those. But if you have a difference that you do not know why it is different, or that you haven't fully understood it yet, you need to reach out to us again to really make sure that that is being clarified. This is really about, again, just checking to make sure payments weren't missed, transfers weren't missed, or that there's not some bug in the GIS system that we're unaware of. So if the balances from your bank account and any balance in the GIS do not match and cannot be reconciled, don't check the checkbox. Just please reach out to the SCC regional coordinator or me so that we can help. For replenishments, we have the Harrisburg funds 2022, 23, 24, which are those initial federal funds that Justin just spoke about. And so in this case, in this example district here, which is old data, those Harrisburg funds 2024 would really need to be out of the replenishment section here, out of the Harrisburg bank account by July. The CSS funds 24-25 are the current state clean stream funds. That's the amount that's available for replenishment, so that like sort of 50% or less in Harrisburg. And when the next allocation is added, that will be added to this field here of the next annual allocation. The amount requested then is based on the quarter's expenses and the amounts that are available in the SEC bank accounts if approved by the SEC. For the spending status, the unreported advance and unreported replenishments mean that that's the total amount that is not yet been sent by the SCC or not yet been received by the district. And so those accumulate, and then when you enter up top in the program income, they then are sort of subtracted there. So if a SCC advance amount entered doesn't match the unreported advance amount, definitely that's a time to contact me at the ACAP GIS support, because those amounts should always be accurate. If the SCC replenish amount is that you enter is less than the unreported replenishment amounts, that's allowed, because again, this is calculating total amounts and you might have multiple quarters of sort of replenishment stacking up from the SCC processing those payments to the district. But if you have an unreported replenishment, or you're trying to enter an SCC replenishment that is more than the unreported replenishments, that's again a time to reach out to the GIS support so that we can help figure out why that amount is different. The remaining balances then are all about what's in both the district and in Harrisburg for that current balance section. And then the committed remaining means it's committed to a contract, to an active contract, but not yet paid. The payment has not yet been entered. And then the uncommitted balance means it's the remaining ACAP funds that are not committed to active contracts. But as I always remind here, if you're using that uncommitted balance to plan for future projects, please just remember it does not account for future admin and tech assistance expenses, potential amendments, or even those future contracts themselves. So that's more of an internal budget process on your end. Okay, so the activity report, most of this is pretty straightforward. So you're just in that first section entering the numbers above. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me or the SCC. For the bottom sections, there's text fields as well as check boxes. So either fill out the text box or check none if not applicable. The last two boxes are the second to last box is for submitting other income or other expenses explanations and justifying that. You can enter any other comments, of course, but it is also the place in which we document any data entry corrections. So if you had a missed payment, you'd be documenting that, or mistransfer, documenting it there. If we as the GIS team or the SCC are making fixes to your quarterly report, we also try and document it there. Of course, working with you all when we do so. For the labor report, just this sort of automatically updates quarter to quarter, transfers that over, but you do need to check the data and make sure it's still correct. So there's a checkbox there. Please don't check the box until you've actually checked the data. And if you need any help there, reach out to the SCC regional coordinators or Eric with questions about the labor section. In the files, this is where you upload documentation that Sam mentioned, including such as like scan of receipts. It can also sometimes be helpful to upload your QuickBooks statements or bank account statements if needed, if that's helpful for you and the SEC. On the Managers tab, this is where you can view your bank account information and vendor information if you need updates. We've had sometimes some address changes as districts change office locations. If you have to make changes to this, we actually first have to update that with the PA budget of the office and vendor services before I can update that in the GIS tool itself. So as we've noted here in the sort of screenshot, you reach out to them first. Make sure you also inform your SCC regional coordinator. And then once that change is made on the state sort of internal budget side, then we can make that change in the tool. I'll also note here, because I've gotten this question a bit recently, as we've had some new district managers this quarter, the button in the top left side of the screen is the district manager signature box. And that is something that you can update if you're a new district manager, but it can only be updated if the quarterly report is unlocked or open. So if you have a submitted quarterly report or an accepted quarterly report, that you can't change that in the past, but if it's open, then you're able to, as a new district manager, add your signature there to be saved for the future quarterly reports. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help walk you through that. All right, submission is that little button at the top bar that's got a blue arrow associated with it. You do the report checklist to make sure you've done everything you need to do. And then, as Sam mentioned, the district manager or their delegate can submit the quarterly report. After submission, the SEC reviews the report. If needed, with corrections, we can unlock the quarterly report immediately before it's accepted. If it's something that can be handled immediately, basically. Once the SEC accepts the quarterly report, though, they begin processing the requested replenishment, if applicable, when internally. And then when the replenishment check is sent, they will document that as replenishment processed. That is the overview of the quarterly report process. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat or reach out to me directly. I also, as a note later, I've been going through one-on-one new user trainings as part of the process. And in that, I give folks a brief overview of the quarterly report. But if you are someone who just wants a walkthrough of the quarterly report process in depth, please feel free to schedule a training with me and I'll go through you with that. And I can also reach out to the SEC regionals if you have like policy questions. So I'm gonna switch over to my GIS tech support updates and stats. We've got a bunch of things always happening, of course. In this past quarter, Q2, we completed about 52 tech support and training requests, as well as 11 sort of multi-step, more complicated tech support fixes. We also have continued to have a large emphasis on the practice approval system practice manager tool. We completed 19 improvements there, as well as 16 sort of general GIS project improvements, which sometimes apply to the ACAP reporting tool, sometimes apply to our other tools. And that also includes a new tool that my coworker Ben created in partnership with some other folks. This is the new Find ACAP contract directory map. This is something that is available on the Penn State Extension website at Find ACAP. It's the short URL. So this is also, that means it's on the CACAT website itself. In this little sort of dialogue, basically, you have a map. You can click on it. This is really designed for folks who are from members of the public or interested parties who want to be able to find your contact information as the districts all in one place related to ACAP, a quick dashboard overview. And so they can also select from a drop down in the bottom, and then it will pull up sort of basic contact information for your district, individual district contacts themselves, and then some quick statistic overviews. So I want to share this to make sure everyone knew about it, but also to share that I highly recommend it if you're a district staff person to just check again to see if your contact information there is the appropriate folks. We usually include the district manager as well as one or more other staff contacts there. And I check over this regularly when I onboard a new person at a district. I check to see who should be the contact and update any things there. But if you haven't seen the map yet, I highly encourage you to go check on that. In other updates to the ACAP reporting tool, I have spent a lot of the spring focusing on reconciling individual discrepancies and individual bugs. So these are things that are really impacting more users or separate districts, and impacting the ability to like submit data or just fixing data entry that got confused in the past. So that's been a huge emphasis this spring. So I have fewer like major program updates to the ACAP reporting tool, but one of those is that we did enable Philadelphia as an active county for data entry, and that was for the State Conservation Commission as well as Chester County, who's helping manage the Philadelphia County data there. And then in June, we had a large bug that some of you all reached out about, but thankfully did not impact your ability to submit these Q2 2026 quarterly reports that are happening now. It was that there was some automatic starting calculation balances that had gotten messed up before the quarterly reports were eligible to even be submitted. So we were able to fix that, but it did impact a bunch of counties. If you didn't know about it, that's great. You're all good. And if you did know about it, I'm just confirming that that was fixed. And if you do see any additional like bugs in any quarterly reports, again, please feel free to reach out to me and your SEC regionals ASAP. We're also currently developing and testing some additional improvements to the ACAP reporting tool. Right now, we've been focusing on contract work sites and practices, and that's because that's sort of hand in hand with the updates that we're making to the past practice manager, which I'll talk about in a moment. So these are not yet published, but we hope to publish in the next month or so. So this includes importing practices and work sites from the past practice manager into the ACAP reporting tool, because some folks who are in the past certification system are entering data there, and we're trying to reduce duplication of efforts. And speaking of reducing duplication of efforts, we're also working on allowing users to copy plan practices into the implemented practices section of a contract. That's something that plan practices were enabled, disabled, they're back. We are enabling folks now to be able to also copy them so that you don't have to reselect a bunch of practices all the time when you're filling out your deliverables and verifying those VMPs. And then we also had some bugs in the contract worksite creation that were impacting some users intermittently. And that is something we are addressing as part of this improvement to contract worksite. So there's going to be some changes in the contract worksite creation process. We also have heard from a variety of users that there's some bugs in the data validity strategy feature. So this is where like in a contract, it'll show up as a potential issue in sort of the all contracts list. I'm working through those. Since those are potential data issues and are not like as formalized as compared to the financial information, is of course always the highest priority for us. That's something that with PASS we had to take a back seat on, but I'm turning my attention back to once we get through some of those contract worksite and practice updates. So in the past practice manager, this is again the link. If you are someone who's going through the past certification process, you will continue to see updates be put into the tool intermittently, as well as when you go through additional past practice package certification trainings, we will give you an update on that. I will also be, as I'll say in a moment, we just went through a bunch of updates that were published. So I will be updating our step-by-step instructions and tutorial video that is available on this website, support.agconservation.psu.edu/pass, for folks to be able to quickly access that as needed. So in April, after the most recent ACAP webinar, we published a bunch of bug fixes and improvements related to custom styles, tables, and map legends. In June, I published the new past barnyard stormwater package practices. Just now in July, we published a large set of code updates, including additional watershed delineation functionality and some additional map layers like contours and more. This is all in preparation for the past barnyard stormwater training. And then we're going to continue to make some small edits and bug fixes as we go, but those will be relatively minimal for the recent future or the short term. But we will then be making other updates as we go through the other pass packages as that certification process continues to evolve. I've mentioned the new, as of January, new required intro training for new hires, new ACAP GIS users. This is just a 1 hour on-demand training that you can schedule through my bookings page, but it is required to receive a new ACAP GIS user count. And it is available to those of you who maybe have been on the job or been in the ACAP GIS tools for a while, but just wants a refresher. Usually I review the ACAP reporting tool, but if you want a one-on-one tutorial of the past practice manager, or if you want to deep dive into something, you're welcome to schedule a training with me. In this quarter, I trained 8 users from 7 counties and already trained a couple more in Q3 2026. So please reach out for ACAP GIS tech support. I have open office hours most Tuesdays. That information is on the GIS events calendar on the support website, which is linked in the bottom right here. You can email the GIS team at acapgissupport@psu.edu. It's usually better to email that address rather than my individual email address, just in case I'm on vacation or out of the office. That means that someone else will hopefully be able to see it at least. And then you can also call my phone number, 814-863-2312. If you, that'll ring to my computer if you have an urgent question. And we can also usually from there just try and get on a Zoom call or a screen share to be able to see the issue. So as always, the GIS team is supported by ACAP and the State Conservation Commission. And if you have any questions, please add them to the chat.
All right. Thank you, Elaine. That was great information. And yeah, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. Otherwise, thank you so very much. And we appreciate you coming today, and reach out to any of us if you have questions about anything. And if any of us don't have the answer, we will find it for you.
Erin has her hand up. I feel that she has something to provide to us. Erin, you want to go ahead and unmute and go ahead?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to also add a reminder that the ACAP Awards nomination period will be ending on Monday. So please, as you're going through all your reports and you're going through your GIS systems with what we've discussed today, please consider thinking about which of your projects, which of your, colleagues, yourself, that you may want to nominate for an award. So we need time to review all of the applications, the nominations rather, and I really would love to see all the excellent work that we're doing across the state. So make sure to submit that before the end of the day on Monday. Thank you.
Erin, I have that link in the chat.
Great.
Just the categories of the award opportunities is Rookie of the Year, ACAP MVP Award, ACAP County Team Award, ACAP Partnership Award, Innovative ACAP Project Award, and Best ACAP Project Photo Award. So there's a lot of categories out there for the districts. Nominate yourself, someone else, just get some nominations in there. Let's have a good response to this, and appreciate everything that you all guys do. And thanks for tuning in today.